Ugh. Youch. Yep, done a hole in me sock. Nice. That's it, there's the roof line. Welcome back. My name's Workshop Lewis, and in the previous episode, we messed around with the B-pillar, the doors, and some chrome trim. And to start this episode, we've got to add a couple more pieces of chrome trim along the door, which will then help us get the lines on the B-pillar and how it all flows in together. Then we've got to work out how to get the bonnet latch attached. I took it apart maybe 2.5 years ago, so I can't remember a thing. Gonna have to go back, work that out. Definitely don't use this as like a how-to on how to put a bonnet back, because I got no idea. Yet. I have no idea yet. Let's get the chrome trim onto the door, put the windscreen, put the rear view mirrors back on, and see how it's all looking. Oh yeah, also, in the last episode, we put the chrome trim on. I got a couple of comments saying, ugh, why are you using chrome trim? I won't be using chrome trim. We've just got to dry fit everything and then it'll all get black powder coated. Sick. The seal is removable from the chrome strip and it is completely gone. I'll order a new one, but for mocking up purposes, this is all we need. That goes there. Looks good. Ooh. I haven't put any clips on this one or the top one. They are quite difficult to get off. If you do need to get them off, you've got to push them down and flick them up, I think it was. Might have been the other way. You need to push and roll. Nice. So this is kind of why we test fit everything. This is a little bit too far forward, or no, too far backwards. Hi me. But this piece is definitely in the wrong position, and without putting the lower piece on, you will never really know. If I had just cut this, boy, that would have been a mistake. Always test fit kind of everything. Make sure everything works together. I'm going to do the same to the other side. We'll do that off camera, and then we're going to go on with the bonnet. So here are the parts that I found. We've got the cable and the handle. We've got the latching mechanism that goes at the front of the bonnet. The hinge, I don't have the gas strut. That's something that I've got to look for. And then we have a container of rusty bolts. I don't know which ones I need to use. I'm sure the ones that I'm going to need to use are in here. Rusty. So we're going to have to give them a clean up, and I think the first step is taking the bonnet off, trying to run the cable to roughly where I think it is, and then working out if I need to redirect it. Sick. The S50 in all its glory. Haven't had it uncovered for a little while. Also, I forgot that I'm missing those bits. Let me try and find those, which are probably somewhere in there. Younger Workshop Lewis, every now and then, acted a little hasty, and now older Workshop Lewis has to fix those problems. So previously, this is the cable for the bonnet release, and I remember I cut it just to get it out of the car, but now it's too short. Luckily, I've just come back from a bicycle store. This is the main end that needs to be, yeah, that's the end that we need. A road bike cable is basically the same thing. It's not a solid wire like the original bonnet release cable. It's still going to do the same thing. You just need to put tension on the catch or the latch and pull. So it's going to do the same thing. And I've already put the E30 fitting on the end, and it works fine. Where did I put that? There it is. The other end has a little doodad that you can slide on and then with an Allen key tighten up. So we can cut that any length we need. The next bit that isn't really my fault, Time's fault, I would say. The grommet that goes through the firewall is broken, and just old 35-year-old rubber. I've got another little grommet it's the right size on the outer diameter. I'll punch a hole through it for the cable. It's just to keep the weather out. It doesn't have a fancy little tail, but it's still going to do the same thing. And then the last thing that is, again, my fault, more recent Workshop Lewis's fault, when I forgot that I cut the cable, it was folded over on itself real nice and neat. The little brass pin would come in and out quite easily. I kind of put a little kink in it and then just like pressed this bit in. So I'm going to have to drill that out, but then we can put it all together and it doesn't matter. You just heard what I said I'm going to do. I'm going to do all of that and then hopefully it all works. But I mean, maybe it doesn't and you never get to see this. So the only thing I need to do is this bit is just a little bit too wide. I'm going to grind a little bit of the bottom off so it can sit flatter and then get into the right spot. But this is going to work. Sick. Yes. So we've got both the ends working. Now we just need to get the length. The cable is 10 bucks. When you're doing something like this, I kind of expect to mess this up at least once, but 10 bucks, it's not too bad. At least we found a solution to the problem that doesn't mean I need to buy like an $80 cable off eBay and wait 2 to 3 weeks. Sick. The little springy end goes to the black end. Now, because it's long enough, we can get this end, oh, I'm standing on the other end of the cable. We can get this end into the release mechanism, and we can even prove that it's going to work. So we can close the latch, and then maybe I can't. I can't get the purchase on it. You just have to believe me that that worked. It worked. Sick. Okay, so now I need to work out the length. What do you reckon? Do I cut it long? I mean, there's no reason why I shouldn't cut it long. If I go there, let's just give it like a couple mil. Let's see if I have to drive out to the bike shop again. Oh, okay. Okay, we're learning. I got to do the little grub screw up a little bit tighter than that. Maybe that's where this falls apart. Latched. Unlatched. She works, which is sick. All right. Saved by a bicycle shop. Let's get this cable into the car. The hardest part about getting this cable in is going to be the grommet. This isn't going to be the last time I have to take this out. I'm not going to put the grommet in. I'm just going to let it sit there. Big success. Great success. Spent the last couple of days gapping everything, and everything still works, which means we can now go on with the B pillar. Just needed to make sure that all of the doors would work with the fenders and the rear quarters and the bonnet. And now that we've confirmed all of that, we can just start cracking on with it, working out how and where everything gets welded together. Since we've confirmed all of these bits work together, I can now take these all off, get them sent out for powder coating. I'm gonna go gloss black, not gloss black. Let me show you around the car and look at what the gaps look like. Passenger door, pretty good. Front and back. Bonnet gap, looks real good. There's gonna need to be just a little bit of massaging of the fender to push it out. But having a chat with Trev from the crash shop, they kind of swoop in at the end of the bonnet anyway. Same thing on this side, just tickle that out a little bit, but the rest of the gap looks real good. This was probably the worst to get set right, but it's looking really good and the seals all look pretty good. and the rear. Let's put you back on the tripod and show you a little trick that Trevor from the crash shop showed me. So I was having a chat with Trev and I wasn't sure about the seals. He suggested getting a piece of paper, seal is definitely sealing. And I noticed over here, the chrome swoops up a little bit. I may be able to get a piece of wood and knock the angle down a little bit of where the chrome's sitting, which will then close the gap, but just acceptable. Yeah, anything less than that, you would be worried that the seal isn't going to do anything. So if you're gapping doors or something in the future, keep it in mind. Sick. Now that this is all schmick, we can now go onto the B pillar, which is good. I've been looking forward to this part. What we can do, we need to start working out how exactly this transitions into the rear quarter. And I think this is a little bit too high, but I've just realized something. If that comes up, we wanted that, then transition that down. In the last episode, I said that I shouldn't have welded the inside of the rear window panel to the rear quarter because we want this piece to be running in line with this piece. So I think what I can do is cut, and then that can pivot in, and then we can get it all lining up with the lower piece. And we'll be able to weld the rear quarter panel to that lower panel, as well as the rear window panel to the lower panel. So it'll still have a good structure in there. And before we close it all up, we have to finish welding all of the rear quarter panel on anywhere that we're not going to be able to see once the B pillar is on. Should have come down further and then cut further. That's going to be horrible to clean up. So the trouble I'm having right now is how this transfers down to here. And it's not as though I can just cut across here and lower the whole thing, because I still need this to transfer down properly as well. And I mean, maybe we just change this radius so it goes to nothing, and then it would be like that, which then ends up there. I can't quite picture it in my head of what needs to be cut. Like, I definitely don't need that. I don't think I need this little bit across the bottom, but this radius has to transfer down. I'm going to think about this for a little bit and see what I come up with. My ankles. I learned a valuable lesson when I was doing the rust repairs in the engine bay, that sometimes I get a better result when I'm not filming. And brain capacity wise, I didn't have enough of that brain capacity to work out what to do here and film. So I apologize, but we've kind of got the rough shape and idea of what's going on. And I'm pretty happy with it. When I was first doing it, I thought, something's not quite right here. Looked at it more throughout the day, and I think we've got what we need. So I'm going to take you off the tripod, show you around, and I think at that stage I'm going to take it all apart. I'm not going to do butt welds on this, so I'm going to get the swager from next door, swage it so there's a little bit of an overlap. Let me show you what I mean. Swaging is when you put a little bit of a S-bend in one side of the steel, and it means that you can have the other panel sit flush with it, so they'll still be at the same level on that plane, but I can move it in and out, tack it where it needs to go, and then if it isn't quite right, I can then cut the tack and move it in or out, and then weld that whole thing up, bog it, sick. I've scribed both panels on both sides, swage one side for each join, tack it up, get rid of all of the clecos, because I feel like clecos are kind of distracting me from what the end product is going to look like. And I did just put some electrical tape over the chrome trim just to make them black and help me picture what's going on here. I think that's everything. Let's get back into it. You definitely want to bare metal the panel before you swage, because sanding this, no good. That's going to work. That now fits in nicely to that one. I do need to bare metal this, spray them both with some weld through primer, and we are good to go. Now we've got to work out which side we're going to swage for these, whether it goes that way or that way. I don't really think I've got enough on this piece to do it, so let's just swage it on the bigger piece, but we're going to bare metal that first. Sick. I think everything's prepped. No, I'm completely wrong. I haven't done that, but that's easy. One of the other things Stan from next door said, when this was on the car, this little change of angle in the sheet probably needs to go away. So I need to flatten that. And then he also suggested just doing a turn down. So then this bit that's going to get welded to the chassis has two thicknesses. So I'll hammer that flat, get a nice like 3 to 4 mil roll around. Let's make sure that fits before I roll that over completely. I didn't realize how much that little turn down was throwing off what I was seeing, because it already looks better. Now, you want that there. That little detail just there, to me, didn't look right. Now it does, which is sick. I have pushed that back a lot further than where it was originally. The Cleco's holding it in slightly the wrong spot. Had a good think about what the next step for this is, and I've prepped all of the individual pieces, but I haven't prepped any of the chassis. And I think the way we're going to do it is I need to mark out exactly where I'm going to be welding to the chassis, and instead of welding each panel together, I think we weld each panel to where it needs to go on the chassis first, get everything lined up, and then we weld each panel to the joining panel. So then we're getting each line right and each gap right, instead of trying to put the panels together, then weld them to the chassis with, I feel like it would be a bit of a struggle. So let's prep everything we need to on the other side, clean off any primer, put some weld through primer on, tack it together. Got everything prepped. Now, when this panel is sitting in the right spot, there is a gap between the back of the panel and the pillar. If I put some foam in the back, it'll just hold the panel out, make it so it can't get drummy at all. Let it sit there just a little nicer. So I'm gonna cut a strip out, put it all the way across, put it on. I might need to take it off though. Let's see how we go. Just gonna get a little piece of this 6 mil thick foam, cut it out, put it on. Yeah, sick. That works perfectly. So now we can put our spacers in. I can just push across. Damn these spacers. Push that closer to the door. That'll set our gap right, and that's set it up in line with the door perfectly. Sick. So with what I was saying before, now that that piece is sitting nicely and I've prepped the chassis, I can tack in that corner. We have to do this piece first because we've got this one going underneath the main pillar. We can do this one next because this is going underneath the inner radius. And then this one should just slide in and cap over the top. Oh, first panel of the B pillar. This line down here, probably the most important feature. We want to get it set perfectly down the bottom and then roll up nice and neatly. Smoothly. Now that we know where these two go together, we can now jump on the back and work out where this back panel is going to sit. I've spent probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours looking at this, making sure that I'm happy with it before I completely weld it up. I cut this weld, pulled it out, so we've still remained in line, and I just don't know about it. Ugh. Youch. Yep, and a hole in me sock. I think I understand why lap welds aren't as good when you're wearing volleys as your shoes. Because there's 2 layers, there's still that chance of the gas building up behind it and then popping. Me ouch. I've put just a little bit too much heat into it, so it has warped it a little bit. My main concern is I cut these welds off and it just like twangs into a completely different shape. It's cooled down now. The back is fully welded except the top, which I need to mess around with a little bit. There are some patches down the bottom here that I haven't completely welded just because I've got the foam behind it. 100% gonna have to replace that foam, but at least it got it into the position that it is now. Even though I'm scared that it is gonna like move into a shape that I can't really fix, I think the next step is to cut all of the welds off, finish welding this, give it a hit with the hammer, try and straighten it out after I've warped it a little bit, and see if I can just take it off, get it set, and then put it back on. Probably with it being black, so then I can get a better idea of what it's gonna look like in the end. I'm gonna need to replace that. I don't know if I like this lapping technique. I think I much prefer a butt weld. I'm not completely happy with any of this. This is by far the ugliest panel joint I've done on this whole project, and I don't know if I want to keep this panel at all. This is ugly, and I can fill it with bog, but I don't know if I want to. We're getting really close to the pointy end of the day, and I try to not make any big decisions or do any like really important welding at the end of a day. I've spent some time panel beating it, grinding it down. It is definitely not the cleanest. I would say it's probably my worst panel joint on the car, and I don't think I'm gonna do the other side exactly the same way. In saying all of that, I think this is still probably usable. I can learn from this pillar and do the next pillar much cleaner, and butt joint using some proper clamps and just a little bit neater than what I've done on this. I think the rest of the day I'm going to spray this black. It is fully welded up, so I can spray it black. And then when I come in tomorrow morning, I can do a couple of skim coats on it, get it looking nice and neat, spray it black again, and then offer it back up to the car to see if it's gonna work. Just realized there's 3 holes that I need to mess around with, and there's a bunch of cleaning up I need to do. Something's wrong. And I sent some pictures to 3 friends. 2 of them got back to me basically straight away and said, this curve doesn't look right. And I agree, it doesn't look right, but I wasn't sure how to fix it. I got Stan from next door, come over, have a look, and we discussed and tried to visualize what it would look like if we just come straight down. So we cut a large section of the radius off, and I don't think that's gonna work. I think if this wasn't as wide, it may work, but I don't think with how big I've made this top bit that it would work properly. So then I thought, what if we did a turn down before it curves in? So then it separates the top, like cockpitty area from the chassis. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not sure about that. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I've spent most of the day just like walking around looking at it, trying to find something else to do so I can walk off the property, then walk back and be like, yeah, that's all right. And then going, just not a fan of it. I've thrown another spanner in the works now. So this is the original cardboard template. And there are quite a few differences between them. How quickly it drops off. So it comes down a lot sooner, and then it's got this little dog leg in it. And I quite like that detail. I think I got something right when I drew this up. Going back and forth, I eventually remembered the cardboard template. And I thought, you know what? Let's go back to the old shapes box and draw up a cardboard template. Can you see that? Barely. Let's bring you around a little bit more. And maybe we'll go down on the tripod so you can get a full side profile. This is a great view of me, isn't it? Let's be able to get me in the shot as well. That looks way better, in my opinion. There's going to be people who don't like it. I don't care about those people. Well, I do. Try and act tough, but really I do care about your opinion. I just think my opinion's more important. In this case, obviously. So what do we do? How do we do that? I made a little piece of metal to kind of cap it. And I think that's kind of right. That's not really going to work from your angle because you'll be able to see right through it. But we want to try and get this radius to follow through, and same on the other side. And I thought, you know what else has that radius? Another jump buck. Let's go cut it up, but I'll lose a couple of hours going back and forth. So I went to my pile of scrap offcuts, and I have this. Yeah. This is the top of a Proton jump buck tailgate, and that radius there should be pretty much the same as that one, and then same for the other side. So I think I'm going to cut, say, 100 mil of this off, and then see if I can panel beat some of this into something like that, and then we'll go from there. We can now use that running in the same line and then turn it down. We got there. I think it's going to work this way. Yeah? Hi, me. That's it. I think the reason it works for me is you've got a little step down, you've got a little step down. So I think I can now cut up the other one, get that one to pretty much the same spot. Once they're both at this stage, then we start working out how to get them both attached to the car. We've got all of our panels cut down to like the basics of what we need. The next difficult part is replicating this perfectly. And I don't know if I'm going to do the same lap joins. I may do butt joins, but I've got to work out how to just make the other side look exactly the same. Maybe even a little bit better. So I have to do less body work in the end. I think it's going to be something similar to what we did to get it to this point, because although we want it to look exactly symmetrical, we still need all of the gaps to line up. So this plane needs to be in the same spot. This plane still needs to line up with our doors, and this inner bit still has to sit in the gap correctly. Maybe start cutting, grinding, get it sitting correct, paint it black, make sure it looks kind of symmetrical. There's the panel. I've got to do a line down the bottom on where to follow. I'm going to see if I can make that detail out of the end, but I've got to get the sharp corner, which I don't know if I have the panel beating technical skills to be able to do that. I've got some cuts to do up the top, so I can fold that around. Went out and bought some black weld through primer because I don't want to have to keep painting it with etch, then sanding it back, painting it with weld 3 primer. So let's get some of that on here, have a look at it. And then I think we've got to take a step back, or maybe side step. I think we need to start working out this top panel. Can you see that from there? Yeah, here, this top panel. I think we've got to work out this top panel next, because it all ties in together down the bottom here, and I probably can't attach each panel until that's sorted. Chuck some black on this, have a look at it, and then move on to this lower piece. Just wanted to run through another little detail that I've been trying to chase that kind of makes a little bit more sense now. So the distance between here and here is about 129.50, and here and here is 136.65. So it's about 70 mil front to back that it tapers out as you head towards the cabin. I've been trying to get it parallel, thinking that most cars or most utes are parallel. I've just measured a jumbuck, a Falcon ute, and a Holden ute, and they all taper, which, now that I think about it, makes sense, because as the rear quarters come back, of course it's going to be narrower at the tailgate end. I don't know why, I just assumed that it wasn't the case. So now that I don't need to chase that, I'm not going to. I've had a chat with Trev. He's the guy from next door in the crash shop, and I've spoken to him about what's going on with the rail, and he said I should have an inner layer and an outer layer, or an inner skin and an outer skin. Generally speaking, you don't really want a third layer because it just creates another point for rust to start with. Outer layer, I am going to leave some of the rear quarter up the top corner, which will be a third layer, but then I'm going to get a bit of angled that will then be able to glue up to the top panel. We attach this angle to the wheel arch, so there's going to need to be some cutting on this so it then follows the curve. We'll be able to weld that together and then put a glue line on the top and glue that to this, which means we now need to work out how to attach this to the rear quarter. I have 2 of these pieces. They've got a bigger turn down than the original piece, just to give it a little bit more rigidity. There's heaps of different ways I could join this, between lat welds, butt joints, spot welds, plug welds, and panel bond. But working out the best way to do it, I think what I'm going to do is do all of the steps and processes I need to this one. The join from about here to here basically has to be a butt weld. I didn't get these made wide enough, and there's no overlap option at all. The place I got these made up doesn't exist anymore. There's a place called Sheet Metal Australia, and they shut down, and I've looked and I can't find anywhere else that would do something similar. So we really do not want to mess these up. I'm going to get either end sorted because we want to be inside the line of the B pillar, and then we need to make sure that this is lined up very neatly on the end pillar. So let's mess around with that. Then I might have a play around with some lap welds into butt welds, into lap welds, and then I think we've got enough meat on the rear quarter down this end to then do some plug welds, which will mean there's going to need to be body work done on the top here, but it should just be minimal skim coats, keeping as much of it metal as we can. Does that make sense? Whatever. Do not like that one bit. The swaging issue really is more of a skill error than a technical problem. We're not doing lap welds. I don't have the tools required to get that nice and neat. We're going to do a butt weld all the way across, right up until we get to underneath the B pillar, in which case we're going to duck under will have 2 layers, so we'll keep the layer of the rear quarter, and I'm gonna drill some holes in the top of the rear quarter panel. This panel will go underneath, and we're gonna plug weld underneath. So that means we can now get the real pieces that we're gonna use, template it onto this rear quarter, tack them in, do the exact same on the other side, tack it in, take some measurements, make sure that it's relatively symmetrical. I realized that we have to do this to weld in the B pillars thoroughly and make sure they're all nice and symmetrical as well. We need both of the mounting points finished. So these go in today. Sick. 2 more panels done. That means B pillar, wheel arches. Getting real close. There's a little surface rust on the underside, so there's a bit of prep that I need to do. Sand it all back, weld through primer, little bit of panel beading on this and the rear quarter, but I think we welded this one in before I mess around with the other one, because like this looks correct, but is it correct? We're ready. Well, I'm ready, you're just gonna watch. And hopefully watch me not make a gigantic mistake. I've got a wet towel up against the rear quarter. This fold should mean it shouldn't warp too much, providing I don't absolutely blast it with heat. I've got some spray gun holders magneted to the rear quarter with some sanding discs, because they've got a nice soft face to keep it all protected. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth, like maybe get 1 tack in, get another tack in, get 3 or 4, and then cut 1, and then just a lot of messing around really. Hopefully this isn't a gigantic mistake and it all works, but you'll know soon enough. I'm completely forgetting something. Panel clamps. I recently watched this old Tony video on these, and previous to that, I had no idea that these existed. So, thank you, this old Tony, because this should make them way easier. If you also don't know who this old Tony is, you should go watch him. Look at that, eh? That's super nifty. These only work if you can get to the back of the panel, because you have to slide this little bar in and out. But we can now go like this. Yes! Sick! Thanks, Tony. Sick. Oh, boy. That just made it so much easier. That went so amazingly well. I almost can't believe it. That, I don't know what it looks like on camera, but that's following the curves so goddamn well. Yes! Holy cow, that went well. I did that Friday, it's now Monday morning. I didn't want to weld the whole thing up on both sides on a Friday afternoon. Too many risks of mistakes. But I'm going to take it off the tripod straight away and just show you how well all of it follows curves and lines. And you'll also notice there is another jumbuck panel in the back of the ute. Because of the way I've done the top capping panel, the B pillar that I've made is no good. I can't use it. So I just went out, bought another one. Sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost, my mic just died, so I might be in a slightly different spot. Sunk cost fallacy kind of stuff. I could have put more time and effort into it when really just start again. Get rid of it. I will keep that one as a little memento, but let's get you off the tripod and show you how the cappings turned out. They work so well with the lines of the car. Everything it just works. And it works so well on both of them. And I mean, it looks way better in person. it doesn't quite capture it, but they really top off the whole thing. Once the wheel arches are in and everything's one color, it is gonna look sick. Back onto the B-pillar. Originally, this bit was thicker, and now I've got a gap on the inside. So this is why we can't really use these. I've cut enough tail off with the jumbuck, so I might be able to get this kind of detail in the panel on both sides. I also wanna do both of them at the same time, with no lap welds, just butt joins, and I can set them up at the same time and get them looking symmetrical. There's a lot of talking. Let's do some building. Right. I'm making good progress. Just making it so each piece looks exactly the same on both sides. So I did the first bit, the inside fold on both sides, got them looking pretty similar. I'm now messing around with the outer bits. So I've done the little turn up underneath, and getting the cuts for the fold in the same spot. I needed to standardize something. Yes, the next thing I need to standardize is the thickness of this piece and then the thickness of the under piece. Just sorting out each panel on both sides at the same time to try and make them look exactly the same. I'm gonna keep messing around with it. I'll come back when everything's kind of looking nice and neat and pretty, because it is very fiddly. And we're done. So we've got both sides set up the same, looking pretty good. I know there's a bunch of clamps, but it is like the minimal amount of clamps that I need to get it into position. And I haven't done anything to do with this spot, because pretty much the easiest thing to line up, because we've got the door to work with. This side definitely went better than that side. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cut along here. That is going to get tacked together. Then we're going to come over to the other side, do the same thing to this side, so then we can use that side as a bit of a measurement, kind of, that is the standard that we're going to work towards. Then once we've got those bits on, we can do the door panel, and then we're just working out what we're going to do with the radius just here onto the E30 roof. There's going to be a patch panel that has to get put in here, and then we're still working out exactly how this comes into the roof line. I've kind of got the feeling that that's just going to sort itself out, to be honest. Let's send it, see how it goes. That's one B pillar. Not finished, but it is definitely now a B pillar. But that's a really good start, and I feel way happier about the butt joins. Like, there's just more, you can get more manipulation into the panel. I mean, even if I made a mistake, it's probably easier to unpick as well. So I don't think I'm going to be doing lap welds anymore. But that's all right. You got to try at least once. I think I'm going to do the other side exactly the same as this. I've been filming pretty sporadically because there is, like, it's super fiddly. Trying to get these looking exactly the same is tiny cuts, tiny measurements to try and mirror each side. And I've kind of worked out that as long as the base is exactly the same, they have to be dead accurate. And then the way the B pillar transitions into the roof, they both need to be exactly the same. If I'm slightly thicker by a mil or two in the profile, I don't think it's worth worrying about. The next thing that I think is pretty important is the way this panel sits along here. And I think I've just come up with a bit of an idea. So on the other panel, there's a tiny little fold up. So then you've got extra thickness as you weld into it. This panel has been really annoying trying to get this one to work the exact same as the other one. But what we can do, I can't remember why I had this folded up, but if we profile a section of this to the top of the rear quarter, and then we're still going to need to profile a section of it to the B pillar, we can then plug weld this down, and we'll do the same thing on the other side, so that little fold will get cut off. We can basically set these two panels up identical on here, and then it'll be easier to get this line perfectly straight, because I'll just be able to push it up to that. I'll be able to plug weld across, I'll be able to do some stitch welds right in the corner, and then just get a really clean line onto the rear quarters. I find it difficult to film when I don't particularly have a plan, because it chops and changes, and I go, oh, maybe I'll try this, this doesn't work, I'll try this, that also doesn't work, and then before you know it, I've filmed like 20 to 30 little videos that basically are unusable because everything I've said hasn't worked. So I think this is the best plan, and I think if I clean up that right angle, cut it to length, profile both sides, tack it down, which does mean I need to make sure that anything in this corner that needs to be welded has to be welded first. We can then offer this up, offer the other one up, and hopefully we've got this detail the same. So then that's done, that's done. This is really easy. We've just got the roof transition to do next. Whatever. That's kind of profiled to what I need to do. I need to make the angle a little bit tighter. I'm going to do that next door in the crash shop, and then we can profile the other end to the drop off in the B pillar. Sick. Oh, also drill some holes in this for there, and then the other holes go in the panel. Nice. So now I've already templated this onto another piece. I haven't cut it out, just so if this is wrong, I don't waste another piece. I've drilled out the holes to 8mm just to allow for a bigger plug. I'm not going to weld all of those up straight away. I'm going to tack this on, test fit the B pillar, make sure that it all works, and then we can weld this on for good. I don't know if it's out far enough. No, that's spot on. Yes! Oh, that's so good. Yeah, nice. All right. So, then that. Yeah, sick. Okay, that's gonna work. Nice. That is a gigantic success. And I know, like, just a second ago, I said I was gonna test this one before I made the other one. I already made the other one. I made it off camera. And now that this has worked, we can fully weld them in both sides. And I don't really need to like keep concerning myself. Like, you can feel there's a spot behind there that's, yes! We can now sort this out. And I'm not doing a lap weld. We're just gonna do a butt weld. And it's because I did the practice on the other one, I know exactly what I need to do. We're just gonna get this gap looking about right. We can scribe all the way around, cut this rear panel, and then butt weld the whole thing using those little clamps, getting it all in the right spot. Bang, let's do it. I'm so much happier with that. That is sick. That's holding shape really well. Now I need to work out what's going on with the roof. But that is like spot on. Yeah, that's so good. Sick. I need to take out a little bit more for the join, but let's tackle the roof. So we need to bring this panel out a little bit. We need to bring this panel in a little bit, have them meet, but as they're meeting, roll around. Because I think if I, right here, from about here to here, if I cut that and back, I could blend from here back quite nicely into the roof. Still got to beat this detail into the roof, but I think that would be quite easy. From here back to here, this is where we get a little bit trickier, and it's a little bit more artistic, I would say. I get an angle grinder, open this up a little bit, because They're like that. As they come together, that gap is only going to get tighter. And then we need to V out this corner so it can start rolling in straight away. We want to get them to meet, but we want to probably do some panel beating on the car because I can't just go bang, weld it. That might not look right on the car. Let's put the clecos back in because this still needs to come out more, but I don't think I'm going to get that out enough with it dipping in behind the roof skin. The clecos hold it in place, so kind of, but not completely. I think we want to panel beat that down. If I mark that out and cut that, that's going to be short, 100%. This needs to roll around. So I think I'm going to take everything apart again, do a little bit more panel beating, then put it back on. Can you see down here? Yeah, where we started it isn't quite flat with the door. So if you put that here, it bows out a little bit just towards the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut from this tack to this tack. And then we'll be able to push it in a little bit more as we weld it. We want to do this first so that if this changes this, we don't set this and then have to cut that apart. Step by step, baby. That's bowed that out a lot. All right, let's keep chasing our tails. Push this. Oh, I'm about to run out of battery. We're good. Fixing one thing has led to multiple other issues. So we fix this, push this out, fix this. It's since pushed this out, so we've closed the gap down the bottom. So we're going to need to do that again first before we do the top. Nope, I'm welding. Don't want to do that with safety glasses on. That is looking good though. So at least we are fixing things and not just ruining things. Although that is pushed out quite a bit. That's still, I think that's still within tolerance. That's, oh man. We might just be able to get away with that. I reckon it's that. Messing with the gap. This tiny corner is messing with the gap. Yeah. Cool. To the heating station. Come on. Come on, pal. Come on. Yeah, sick. Sick. All right, I'm glad I didn't worry about the lower part. Really wish I was wearing my welding helmet right now. So it's kind of set up really well. Didn't turn the camera off. We have made some serious progress, people, and I am feeling good about this. We can score that. That has to come out. Because that's welded together, that has to be right. I regret saying that already, but let's see. Well, that should be spot on now, shouldn't it? Shouldn't be holding it under anymore. Which does change the way the tension is being held into the panel. Maybe I shouldn't have cut that. Maybe I should have welded it. I'm gonna get a drink of water. We're getting real close. It's starting to make a lot more sense to me, and just minute little adjustments. So to get it into position that it's in, I've lifted the E30 roof, and I think if we can just lift it just that tiny little bit more, we can slightly modify this radius and make it all come in and meet each other really well. I'm super happy with how this is turning out. The next thing that I need to do, and I really want to make sure I get this right, is this line here. I've gone out, I've had a break, I've stopped looking at the roof, I've come back, and in my mind, it has to still stay there. So we've got to work out how to get that in, and I think I've got a solution. So let's go over to Greg. So we've got 2 marks. We're going to get them on the soft jaws, get them lined up, and then I've got a rounded off chisel. I'm going to hit it right there and see how we go. All right, so I've got my hammer. All right, so just hold it there. I think that has kind of done it, but I'm probably going to need to do some panel beading on it. So, I did say this needed to come up. I mean, I think that works. So it would be welded there, right on the corner. And then once we get that tack set, we would then try to manipulate that up like so. If I had $1 for every Cleco I've taken in and out, I think I probably have made $1 for every time I've taken a Cleco in and out. Thank you very much for everyone who watched the previous episode. Did very well. Cheers. That's pretty good. I mean, I kind of wish I could just weld that in now. Because, I mean, that's it. We can then mess around with that. That's it. There's the roof line. Let me take you off the tripod and show you what we've got going on here, eh? So, we've got the little detail. This isn't focusing. Come on, come on, come on. Hey. So, we've got the little detail that we just hammered in. We just want that to kind of taper off. So we may set that in a little bit more. I think the jaws may be a little bit closer on the vise just to make it so it's really just detailed on that one spot. Keep dropping the camera down, whoops. But that is pretty much the roof line, and it's kind of difficult to see on the camera, but in person, looks pretty good. So you can still see the detail. There's gonna be a little bit of bog in there just to get the form and the shape perfect, but that's it. Now all I need to do is that exact same thing on the other side and we're good. But I think that's a job for another day. Because work Chris decided to have a week off, I've now got to go to work. Thanks, Chris. Everybody say thanks, Chris. That's it. This has been a huge amount of work. And in the next episode, I can replicate the other side, get all of this lined up, and then attach everything. And then we are attaching everything, which is sick. If you want to support the channel, I do have a Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description. And then there's a bunch of people who are watching who aren't subscribed. Reconsider that. See ya.